We're going to be talking about a topic that is really interesting because it's rearing its head nationwide, and you guys are dealing with this right now in ways that you're probably, every state is not quite prepared for this. And that's posing a significant problem on this. And this is what's affecting this is what we're dealing with is what most states are dealing with is what you have is you have a grandparent who wanted something to deal with dyslexia, right? And it's really interesting and that's actually how a lot of the dyslexia legislation is happening across the nation, is that we have someone who has a very vested interest in this, and then gets something passed. This has happened in Virginia, it's happened in Mississippi, it's happened in Texas, happened here, and it's really interesting is about this. Now, one thing that I want to talk about is we're going to broadly talk about dyslexia, and we're going to broadly talk about some things relating to this, kind of give you some information relating to this. But there are some things that I'm going to highlight for you that I want to just caution you for. And now his presentation this morning kind of delved just briefly into dyslexia and talked about some issues relating to this and some things that we need to pay attention to, because the courts, there's a mismatch about this. And there's some serious cautions that you guys, since you just started this implementation of this just a few weeks ago, some very serious things you need to think about as a part of this. And I'm going to try to pick up on some lessons that I've learned from other states and pay attention to this as a part of this so that it will help you as you deal with this. Now, the problem with this, and this really is the big problem, and you guys are brand spanking new out of the gate on this, is the problem is this, and we're seeing this repeated in almost every single state. Because first, there is a serious animosity or kind of misinterpretation of what special ed is. Parents do not want their child labeled as special ed. So they don't want the special education label. So they don't want this, despite the fact that many kids, because of the training we get, specific reading programs we're going to be giving to kids with dyslexia is in fact basically special ed, all right? I mean, we'll talk about Orton Gillingham training in a few minutes, but it's interesting about this is the parents don't want this. So they don't want their child to be labeled as special ed. They don't really understand what 504 is, and I'll highlight a document that I'll pass out to you guys relating to this. But they don't understand what 504 is, so they want their kids labeled as having dyslexia. It's socially palatable. It's okay. It explains a lot of things like this. And there's several things that I want to highlight for you because this implies, and I appreciate the fact that we're doing this at a special ed conference. This is not a special ed implementation thing. And we need to emphasize this. We need to emphasize this is a general ed system that you guys are implementing. And general education teachers, and I speak to you as a faculty member in higher education, we do a terrible job training general educators to know about dyslexia. So I'm putting it out here. I'm a member of those people who do these trainings, things like this. My classes, they get it. But others don't, okay? But really, we do a terrible job. General education teachers, you have brand spanking new general education teachers in your buildings starting just a few weeks ago who are certified by the state. Think about many of you during your first year of teaching, how different you are than what you are now. My first year of teaching, I'm surprised they even paid me. I was so bad. Okay, I didn't know where to turn things in. Let me tell you my first day of teaching. My first day of teaching, I was so proud. I was a special education teacher working with kids with learning disabilities. I taught in Appalachia area of Virginia. Profoundly poor. Most of my kids didn't have running water, electricity. And most of my parents did not read. It was a really kind of sad situation. My first day of teaching, I'm so proud. I put on a tie because I couldn't student teach with a tie because I taught kids with emotional problems. Okay? But you understand why. I did. But I pull up the very first day of teaching. I pull up right in front of the building, and there's a spot right there in front. And I'm so damn proud. I pull right in there. This is an omen for my educational career. It's set for me. Everything's good. We're good. Everything's just pleased. Everything's wonderful. Okay? I'm teaching. I'm like 20 minutes into my first class. I'd prepared enough for these kids for 2.5 weeks for the first hour because I was so afraid that they would say, "What do I do now?" Okay? So I sit there, and about 20 minutes in there, the principal comes and knocks on my door, and he says, "You're in my spot." No one had told me the principal had a spot. There was no sign. There's part of the unwritten rules of the building. He had run an errand to go up to central administration, came back down. I parked in a spot, which is, yeah, see, I'll watch your class. Go move your car. But I'm in the middle of something. Go. I never parked there again. At no point. But but things like this. With first-year teachers, you're dealing with things like this. You're dealing with a lot of training like this. So later on, and I'll show you this, I'll show you how to get to it as part of this. There is a module out there put out by the state of Virginia. My sister is a reading specialist. She actually helped write it. If you use the Google and go to the Virginia Dyslexia module, it's a free module that you can have your teachers learn. It's 98% of what you guys are doing. There's a few little things towards the end where they talk about Virginia-specific rules. But the vast majority of it is really, really good. And it's really, really important. So if you use the Google, type in Virginia Dyslexia module. And you'll see it. It's free. It's a requirement of every single teacher and administrator in Virginia before they set foot in a classroom to have demonstrated that they've gone through this module. And it's put out there. My sister helped work on this. She's a reading specialist. She was not happy with it. There we see it. So it's interesting, but I'll show you just a little bit about that later. But it's free. But put this out for your teams and things like this. Okay. The next thing I want to show you while I have him here, while I've gone, is, and we're going to talk about this. Parents don't want their child labeled IDEA. They don't want 504, so they want this special dyslexia label. The problem we're seeing in other states is if they get poor or crappy dyslexia services, they don't have the same procedural safeguards like you get under IDEA or 504. His whole great presentation this morning about parents suing, that's a check on the system so we do not warehouse kids, that we actually do what we're supposed to do for kids. Okay? My first year of teaching, when I was in Virginia, my first year of teaching, my principal said to me, "I don't care what you do down there, just keep them quiet." Okay? And so I'm not a quiet person, so that was actually really hard for me to do. But it was really interesting. She didn't care if there was any instruction provided. So parents we found this in Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, and Virginia just in the past April and May when I was following the cases on this, is parents are unhappy with the dyslexic services they're getting. They complain. That's it. That's it. So we're seeing it's interesting, we've seen a big swing towards parents wanting special dyslexic services. Now we're seeing parents saying, wait, hold on, that's not doing enough for us. We want something more. We want either 504 or IDEA protections. So we're seeing kind of a pendulum swing on this one. Just pay attention to this because you guys are just right out of the gate on implementing this. So address this and think about this as a part of your implementation, that this may swing back where parents want their child eligible under IDEA or 504. So keep this in mind. So what I did, and some of you may have gotten this yesterday, was part of the pre-conference, and this is materials that are available for you at the website. It's a 504 accommodations guide. This is a free guide. We wrote this because I was seeing school counselors, principals implementing 504 plans and writing 504 plans who did not have a clue whatsoever on how to write these. If you go to the downloadable resources there, it's there for you. It's a PDF document, and I'm just going to spend a minute walking you through this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But it's basically describes what is a 504 plan, how to write a 504 plan. Then it goes by accommodations by disability. And the reason I'm talking about this is I'm going to go down. I'm just going to show you this. And my email address is on here if you have questions about this, things like this. But what is it, how to do this, but how to actually write a 504 plan. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in 504 meetings where parents will say, or the team will say, what do you think we need? And the parents then list off exactly what is needed. And then we don't have any guidance on this. So I'm just going to go down to how to actually write a plan using this document. But then I'm going to show you just two real quick ones. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Right? ADHD, which alphabetically is good, but it's also our most popular 504 one. For every one of these different disabilities we have, and I'll come back to dyslexia in a second, we have an example of what the kid is like, 3 valid websites, and then a list of possible accommodations that you can put in for a 504 plan. Send this out to your school counselors. Send this out to your principals. Send this out so they can do this. Because these kids, like kids with dyslexia, are not receiving special ed services. These are general ed kids. So we need to make sure general education teachers and principals are getting trained in this, and principals on the whole are not receiving instruction on this. So let me just go, I'm going to scroll down to the dyslexia services, okay, which is alphabetical. And so we have for dyslexia, and this is something, you have some kids who need 504s. Think about this. The example of what the example is, some resources for you, and then some possible accommodations here for them. All the disabilities are covered in the same format. This is written so that when you write this before you walk into a 504 plan meeting, you only have to read this one page and a half or so. You are now understanding what you need to talk about. Please disseminate it widely. We're going to be actually incorporating this into a book starting next spring. Right now it's a free document. We'll charge more money on this in the future. But get this out as a way of helping parents with this. So when we talk about this, dyslexia, again, is only a general ed service. And it's pre-special education. Some of these kids may be found eligible for special education at a later date. And so what we have to think about this is what can we work to change and improve what's going on with general education teachers as a part of this. And we need to incorporate the instruction as a part of this and improve where we are with this. Yep. Okay, all my talk will be relating to general education teachers. There is a book out there that I'll shill for you if you want. It's called A Teacher's Guide to Special Education. It's for general education teachers, what they need to know about special ed. It was ASCD's first book on special ed. Some of you are members of ASCD. That's a book that will help my kids get through college. So I do recommend that one. Okay? But it's interesting. Why this book is good is it has answers. It has answers and has reading problems. It has problems. I'm just going to show you some examples just to make a point of why this book is important for you. Okay, and so you can see the table of contents. It's actually a fairly thick book, right? But I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you like a behavior problem. Here are some pages I just took it. For instance, if you have a question, this is really, think about this. Why do teachers often refer kids for testing? It's not often for reading problems, despite the fact that we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about reading problems, starting in about a minute and a half. We're talking about why kids have behavior problems, okay? Is suppose you have a kid who needs verbal questions and directions frequently repeated, right? Could happen, okay? This book has suggestions. How many suggestions? 105 suggestions. I can guarantee every single one of these is not going to work, but what you have is something that might. So when teachers come to me saying this kid might need special education, I immediately say, what have you done from the pre-referral intervention manual that shows me that you've tried something beforehand? This is all, I mean, all the dyslexia services we're talking about, it's all pre-referral before special ed. It's general education teachers having to implement these things. And it's general education teachers without special ed support doing this. So let me show you another one, just for my own entertainment value. Does not listen to what other students are saying. Right? How many examples? 57 examples of what to do for a kid who has this problem. Right? Another one. Fails to make appropriate use of study time. You can see this book is a few years old. It doesn't say turn off YouTube. Okay? Cat videos. All right? But 100 suggestions. Throws temper tantrums. What to do with a kid who's throwing temper tantrums. And those of you who've seen a good temper tantrum know that it's a work of art. Okay? That's how I got a new bike. Okay? But it's interesting about this. I'm a bike racer. But it's interesting about this is you can see some examples here. So this is, and you can see the examples here. This is not this is not a book that every single teacher needs. You just need to buy one for each one of your buildings. Yeah, I mean, seriously, and then have the teachers be able to use this. I mean, if you have a whole bunch of extra money, which I'm sure most of you do have, okay, then you can buy extra copies of these things like this. But just buy one for your building and then talk to the teachers about using this to try to channel what's going on. This is, again, dyslexia services are pre-special ed. This is all pre-special ed. And we need to focus on this as a part of pre-special ed. And we need to pay attention to this as part of pre-special ed. Because this is where teachers flounder. And as we increasingly are raising the expectation of what teachers are expected to cover based on state assessments, and I was in Virginia last week, and the state assessments in Virginia are called the SOL. I'm not making this up, by the way. I'm not making this up, all right? It stands for, it's for standards of learning, okay? I'm from Pennsylvania. My mother-in-law lives in Virginia. She came up, and my son, you'll hear about him later. He's a joker. He does competitive improv. And she turned to him and said, how did you do on the SOL? He wanted to be nice to his grandmother, but he had no idea what she was saying. I understand SOL means something else in text speak. I turned away and let him flounder. It was great fun, okay? It's the service I provide, okay? But just use this book, emphasize this book, okay? And get this thing out there, all right? So back to specific dyslexia stuff. Okay? Special dyslexic things like this, right? So the question is dyslexia real? Okay? And that's a very valid question. We kind of waxed and waned on this. And what's interesting, we have kids with significant reading problems. It absolutely is. Okay? The perception, though, and if you watch TV, we can't get the sound to work, but if you watch TV, you think that kids with dyslexia see things backwards. That they visualize things backwards, things like this, right? And that is the perception when parents talk about this. When we talk with parents about that your child has a significant problem, it may be dyslexia. They actually say they expect the kid to write everything backwards. They expect everything to be seen backwards, okay? And what's really interesting about this. And we started school in Pennsylvania last week. We're a couple weeks behind you on many levels, but we also started school later. Okay? But it's interesting. It's a parent, kindergarten parent who I walk my dog with, came to me last Friday and said, "My kid is doing all these reversals. He's got dyslexia." Okay? And this is a problem. So she said, can you tell me where I can get him tested, where I can get special ed services? He was day 4, the first 2 days were half days. For like day 4 of his kindergarten experience, she now wants to get him tested for dyslexia because he writes things backwards. People don't understand that there's these things that we teach kids when they're 3 and 4 years of age. It's called object permanence. That doesn't matter what things like this, right? Right? What is this? So I don't spill. What is this? It's a water bottle. These are the awake people. I can tell up here. All right? You're also on video, so be kind. All right? Okay. If you go to sleep, we're going to make fun of you. All right? It's a water bottle. What is it now? Water bottle? Sealed. Right? It's not a water bottle, then a cell phone, and then an X-Acto knife, and then a protractor. Right? It's a water bottle, and kids learn this. Kids learn that object's position in space is the same thing. And so when they come to school, first day 2 of school, first week of school is A week. Everything revolves around A's. Everything revolves A, all right? Second week is B week. Everything, we have bats, we have balls. My daughter had a kid in her class who brought his butt and dropped his drawers and showed that, okay? It's really funny. When my daughter just recently graduated from high school, and he was one of the speakers, and all I could remember her saying, "He brought his butt, Dad." And so, okay? But it's saying like, so it's B week. Week 3 is C week. All right, cats, okay, cookies. It's a fun week, thing like this. Week 4, we do B week again. Okay. Because kids understand object permanence, so they write these things down and it poses a significant problem. So parents are latching onto the fact that they think that their kid has reversals and that's going to cause them to have severe reading problems. Yes, reversals are an issue. But it's not uncommon. Those of you who've worked with kindergarten or first grade, and sometimes when you're tired, okay? Yeah, I mean, there was our secretary where I worked with in Kansas for years. When at the end of Fridays, she would get really tired and she would write phone numbers down, and we had no idea who we was calling. And we liked her because she brought in homemade donuts. So we didn't talk to her about it. But it was interesting. But when you get tired, you do reversals. But it takes some concentration on these things. But it's not something that implies what's going on. So is it real? But yes, it's very real. And there's been a dramatic increase in interest nationwide on this. This is, again, you guys are actually a little late to the game on this in Indiana. Other states have been dealing with this for about 8 or 9 years, and so that's why I can tell you about how this ebb and flow of things are happening where the parents are actually pushing back for 504 or IDEA eligibility, things like this. So you're actually dealing with this, okay? This is a picture of the brain, right? The reading brain and also the parts of this, there are issues relating to this. We've talked about reading problems relating to kids with brain issues prior to we even had the term of learning disabilities back in 1963. It's been a historical part of our instruction relating to kids with learning disabilities. It's an historical part of what we do. It was always assumed that kids with learning disabilities had some form of brain trauma, something that had happened that caused this and that caused them to think differently. And as the parent of a child who had a brain injury, yes, they do think differently. But it's interesting how it manifests itself. We'll talk more about that later. So, okay? So why are we getting dyslexia laws? Right? Well, there's a push for this, but there's also a lack of understanding of what special ed is. There really is a lack of understanding of what special ed is. Okay? And it's interesting. I gave these numbers. Some of you were in my session yesterday. I'm going to show you that. I'm actually going to show you the numbers. Okay? Oh, that's not the file. Okay? I'm going to show you the numbers. Okay? This is what society thinks special ed is. All right? This is we're talking about people with reading problems, but some of you are good at math, so you can add this up, and it adds up to 105. So stay awake. But it's interesting. But no, when we talk to parents about special ed, they think it is a separate classroom down the hall with kids with Down syndrome. So there's a negative impact when we talk about the fact that we can provide special ed services. Parents don't want special ed services because they don't understand what special ed really is. They don't understand what's going on this. So one thing that you can talk to them about and explain to them is most kids with disabilities are educated most of the time in the general education classroom. If they're pulled out, it's only pulled out for a little bit of time. Most kids don't have any physical characteristics. I mean, there's things we can say to demonstrate what special ed really is and be part of this. But knowing that this is what people think special ed is, that helps explain why parents don't want special ed. They don't want special ed because this is what they think special ed is. And this is posing a problem. So we're getting to this issue where parents want special reading instruction because tends to be the main problem they have. Well, those of you who have been following the field of learning disabilities over the past 15, 20 years understand that most kids with learning disabilities have reading problems. It's the biggest thing. I mean, we can say that there is no such thing as an average kid with a learning disability, but if you tell me a kid's coming to you who has a learning disability, I'll bet the kid has a reading problem. Okay? I'm willing to bet on this, right? And we've gone through a debate about what kind of reading instruction should be in the general education classroom, but it all hinges on this, right? So what do we need to talk about? Okay? So this is basically, you guys have in each of your districts, you're doing increased awareness relating to dyslexia. You need to train your general education teachers, and I've got some information, I've got some things that I'll share with you that you can take back on this in a little bit. But you now need to start doing earlier screening on this because the expectation, I mean, I read what the State Department put out on this, but the earlier screening on this so that you have an understanding of where we are with this. And then think about interventions, which we'll come back to in a few minutes. But educator training of awareness. There are a lot of teachers, and I'm putting it out there for you, is that most of you are in education because you had a positive experience in education. You wanted to be involved in education. Okay? My daughter, she's a senior in college, she wants to be a teacher. She's wanted to be a teacher since she was in first grade. She's very excited about this whole process, things like this. She's wanted, because she had a positive experience. There are many individuals who had negative experiences in education, who don't want to be a part of this. They don't want to do this. And they're the ones out there who are not involved in this. But we in education had such a positive experience that there are teachers, and you understand this, there are teachers who do not believe that dyslexia is real. There are teachers out there who do not believe that learning disabilities are real. Okay? They'll make all sorts of accommodations for kids with thick glasses. They'll make all sorts of accommodations for kids with hearing aids or kids who use a wheelchair. But a kid who looks like everyone else, who acts like everyone else, who just doesn't seem to produce the same, they're lazy. They just need to try harder. So it's really interesting about this. LD is the biggest category in special ed by far. Not Down syndrome, which isn't even a category. But LD is the biggest category in special ed, but it's often one of the harder ones to include because general education teachers don't think these individuals often have a disability. And it poses a problem for us. So we need to do some increased awareness on this. And increased awareness. And I've got some tips for you. I'll get to that in a second. And then share the resources. The resource, I really am pushing the Virginia Dyslexic module. It's free. You can run through it hundreds of times. It's not going to cost you anything. It's got good information. Okay? I've looked at other states' informations about this when in the past couple of weeks as I was fixing to get ready to come here. I really do push this. I really do push this on you. Okay? And until you guys come up with something better, I will push that on there. Okay? So we talk about dyslexia laws. Okay? These states in red are the only states without dyslexia laws now. Yours is just recent. So when I looked at it, I had a map like this from 2 years ago. You weren't in the club. You're now in the club. And I applaud you for coming to listen to the things about this. But I'm hoping to share some information that will help you what other states have learned as a part of the implementation. Okay? But but the one thing you think about is the pendulum swing. Keep that in mind as we talk about this. All right? So mixed successive dyslexia laws. Okay? Okay? All right? Rhode Island ignored a law passed in 2016 that said you had to actually do these things. And they ignored it. Parents sued. They started having to do this, okay? Iowa passed a law but did not come for additional teacher training. And this is often how we do additional teacher training, but they have provided no additional funds for this, all right? And as there's not a lot of funds out there for you guys for teacher training, you're going to have to share, the burden is mostly on your districts or your school corporations on how to actually do this. You're the ones who are going to actually have to do these things. So we have to about this, right? And you can see this, and this is good, and you can just see that second one is a volunteer group of 10 to 20 parents and educators have been doing most of the training in Iowa. Okay? A volunteer group. Okay? You need to really think about making sure there's a consistent message. You know, they have some good information at your website about this to talk about this, right? So keep this in mind. More. The language and dyslexia laws. Okay? But what you think about this is training teachers on good reading instruction. Because these kids are not in special ed. So this is, again, not a special ed thing that we're talking about. It's on training teachers on implementation. So when we talk about this, right? Why does it mean that non-dyslexic struggles readers by default? And it's interesting is there are teachers out there who will say 20 of my 25 kids are doing just fine. I'm doing something right. Okay? There are kids who will do fine pretty much no matter what you do. Okay? And so we have to think about is what about the others that we can do to improve the services to help them? Okay? We can talk about UDL, we can talk about differentiated instruction, we can talk about reading methods, we can talk about a variety of things, but we need to address these things as a part of this. Okay? So we need accurate definitions of what's going on. There are doctors out there who are writing, as Jim Welch highlighted, little prescription pads. Kid needs full-time dyslexia services with a full-time aide, with a full-time teacher, and probably full-time transportation. And then you're seeing this. But the doctors don't understand this. We're having evaluators, and you guys are getting this. I talked to someone about this yesterday. We have evaluators who are just hanging up shingles and saying, dyslexia services, they got to do it. Okay? It's a new thing. There's a kind of a gold rush towards getting people towards this. So you're going to have evaluators, for lack of a better term, who have poor or crappy levels of instruction on this, and they're writing these things. You need to develop a very specific screening process on this. So at the end, for what you think about is at the end of your first marking period, which is racing up on you guys, okay? You're almost at the end of the first marking period. There are many states that haven't even started, okay? But you guys think about who are the kids who are starting to show signs of problems, and start this process then, okay? Professional development, parent involvement, scope of thinking, we'll come back to that in a second, okay? Okay? And so what I want to talk, the relationship between dyslexia and special ed. Do all students with dyslexia, are they eligible for special ed? Maybe. Historically, kids with dyslexia were identified under the big umbrella of learning disabilities. Learning disabilities, as you know, is one of our big 13 categories in special education. So these kids were getting special education services under the category of dyslexia. And then we're getting under, then moving to LD. So some of these kids are. There is nothing, and the Office of Special Education Programs in Washington has been very specific about this, is that kids with dyslexia can be LD eligible. That gets something that happens, all right? So just because they're labeled as dyslexia, it depends on the services and intensity of what it, I am not answering the question, okay? So are they going to get special ed? They might, all right? Because, just to remind you, the eligible for special education is a two-part test. First, they have to have a disability. Dyslexia counts as a disability. Second, they have to have the need of a special education teacher. Well, how much special ed do they actually need? Is it just instruction in the general education classroom? That's not special ed, okay? Do they need special ed, specially designed instruction by a special education teacher, okay? And some of these kids actually need this. That meets the second part of the two-part test. That meets their eligibility for special education. So you have to think about this, right? So there is an overlap, right? Is dyslexia is not a part of IDA? Yeah, no, it is. You're allowed to use the term. You are absolutely allowed to use the term, okay? And parents increasingly, because dyslexia is a socially acceptable term, okay? There are some terms we have in special ed parents are not happy with. They're not happy with their child is labeled as emotionally disturbed. They're not happy with their child labeled with some disabilities. Autism, it's a catch-all phrase. I mean, we had Asperger's for a while, then they got rid of that. Now we have autism. There's some socially acceptable terms out there, and that we have to think about this. Dyslexia is palatable and explains things, and we can explain and use this. So yes, but yes, you can use this as a part of this. Okay? So the letter that I'm emphasizing, okay? This is what's called a Dear Colleague letter. Jim Walsh talked about this with the letters to Zerkel and letters to Anonymous. Okay? The Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services reiterates there's nothing in IDEA that prevents teams from referencing dyslexia, dyscalculia, or dysgraphia in a child's IEP. So, my recommendation to you, if you have a kid who needs special education because of dyslexia, and they may have even gotten an independent evaluation, and his 4-step guidance on dealing with independent evaluations was very nice. But you think about this, make sure you incorporate that into the present levels of the child's IEP. And you have something very clear in there that clearly delineates what's going on as a part of this. And that you have the present levels clearly highlight what this is and can emphasize this. It's a big part of what we have, right? So yes, you can do this. But then, if you reference it in the present levels, you make sure that you have something in the IEP that then addresses it. As opposed to, yeah, this kid's got all these problems, they have these things like this, yeah, we're going to let them hang out by themselves. Okay? No, you actually reference and do something with this. So this is not new, this is from 4 years ago, okay? But this actually predates most of the efforts that you had in Indiana towards moving towards a dyslexia label. So it's not like the kids with dyslexia could get this. Yeah. You don't. Well, it's kind of a two-edged sword. You don't actually need to use the word dyslexia. Okay, you can describe the specific reading problems the kid has on the Wojo or the Wyatt or something like that. You can end on what you've observed and the specific behaviors that the teacher sees. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. You can describe those. Those meet the letter of what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, not writing dyslexia. No, you're fine. Okay, you can still write you can just write the kid as SLD by describing all the behaviors that the kid has manifested. Yeah, you've met the letter and spirit of the law. Okay? All right, questions parents have. There are some documents that have been put out there for questions and answers for parents on this. Parents are spending a lot of time on the internets looking for answers for this, and it's posing a problem because some of these things, and so this is a document that's put out by the major organizations in special education relating to LD, and it's out there. It's a wonderful document, and you can go to NCLD's website is the main one that has this. They're also the ones who do understood.org, which you sometimes see their billboards and you see their advertisements in magazines. They've got a lot of funding from the Schwab Foundation. Chuck Schwab, the financial guru, is an individual also with dyslexia himself and significant reading problems, and that's why he's funding understood.org to try to help parents out there with this. So you can go to ncld.org or understood.org and get access to 5 questions parents can ask and start a conversation using terms like LD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. Now, Jim Walsh mentioned another thing out there, and so there's a term that I'm seeing that, that you may not refer to. He used a variation on it. It's called dyspedagogia. Kids who are having problems as a result of poor or crappy instruction. And there are some kids out there who are just receiving crappy instruction and they're not doing well. And as a result of this, so we have to think about what's actually causing the problems. Is it the problem is the result of what they're doing or the fact that no one actually taught them? Okay? So one thing we need to think about this is, and I'll highlight this for you in a few minutes, is a lot of the information, and we can train teachers in the Orton-Gillingham methods, is a lot of that information could be incorporated with all kids all the time. It doesn't just need to be kids with dyslexia. Good instruction is good instruction. Okay? And I come from a special ed background. And I remember this real specifically. I luckily got trained in SRA's corrective reading. And then I went back and I got Wilson trained, right? So I felt really good that I could handle these things. But what all the instruction I got from SRA corrective reading, I actually enjoyed the going through the clicking. I enjoyed the heck out of this because I knew my kids were getting a good dose of something. They were getting, it freed me up to do other things. And then when I got Wilson training, I was like, I felt like I could go teach other classes, other kids, because I had really good instruction on how to teach. We need to think about incorporating OG methods and Wilson methods in general education classrooms, because as a way of screening and preventing these kids from actually doing these things. And yes, 20 of 25 kids might make it, but you've got 5 kids who still need something else. That would help with some of these, but it would also benefit these kids, okay? So here are some of these questions, things like this. This is from the document. How is the term specifically LD different from the term like dyslexia? Things like this. What is the difference? I'm on the board of the Division for Learning Disabilities, so I put this slide together for them. Can a school identify a specific learning disability and use terms like dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia in its evaluation? Yeah, right? Can terms be helpful as part of a child's evaluation in IEP? Again, the hard part out there is there's individuals out there, dyslexia in some teachers' minds means visually backwards. Others think it solely as a word attack issue. And you have to think about this as whether it is phonics instruction or phonics light, what is it? Legal reasons, are there legal reasons to avoid terms? No, right? Can specific terms like dyslexia impact the intervention selected for a child? They actually could. So these are the questions we have as a part of this, okay? So what do we know about teaching students about how to teach students with dyslexia? Okay? What does the research on reading interventions demonstrate? Well, basically, many of these kids can be taught. And that's what's interesting about this, is that parents are seeking this. And again, I don't blame them for seeking this. They're looking for something to help their child who is struggling in school. And this is giving them glimmers of hope to do this. Their kid may be the 1 or 2 in their class who can't do this. There are reading methods that can work for them. There is reading instruction that can assist them. We just need to make sure that we're doing this. And we'll make sure that we're doing this with as many kids as possible. Okay? And how is the type of reading instruction students with dyslexia need differ from typical reading instruction? It actually shouldn't differ. It really shouldn't. And this is something that you may see some swings towards over the next year as we start incorporating this in Indiana is more, for lack of a better term, more dyslexia-type reading instruction in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, which actually I think will benefit everyone. I think it will benefit everyone. And yes, I come from a special education background, but we don't need more kids in special ed. We've got enough going on. We need you guys to help prevent these kids from getting identified. And it's a way of actually providing instruction. So what we can do is incorporate more services such as Orton-Gillingham kind of methods, more specific phonemic instruction in classes, and have kindergarten, first, second grade teachers actually do these kinds of things. And then we might be able to prevent these kids from having to have the dyslexic label later. Okay? So keep these things in mind as a part of this. So what do students need? Right? And I don't think there's anything that's disagreeable with what I'm saying here. This is not controversial. First, highly explicit, systematic phonics awareness and phonics instruction. Right? They need this kind of instruction. Right? And there's been that. I mean, I remember when I first started in higher education, there was the big debate as we were not doing any phonics instruction in Pennsylvania at the time. Back in the early mid '90s, there was no phonics instruction, and so we started tracking special ed numbers. Our special ed numbers were going through the roof, because these kids were not receiving any instruction whatsoever. They would come to the special education classrooms. We would do SRA's corrective reading instruction with them, or just Wilson, or something like that. And these kids were getting it, and it was amazing how quickly we were curing some of these kids. Okay? Phoneme, graphic level approaches appear best, just really basic at the phonemic level, things like this. Okay? And it's interesting, we talk about this, and the United States is often compared to Scandinavian countries about how different we are in reading. And what's interesting, my daughter used to lived in Copenhagen for a while, and she was doing some research in Finland. Once you learn one sound for each letter, it is the same sound for that letter. So you only learn that one sound. We have all these sounds of letters that, like, when they're combined with other things, it's hell. Okay? It really is tough. And we have variations and modifications because we're a language that's taken in all these other things. They're very specific, and so they look at their literacy rates as being significantly higher. Their reading it's easier. Yes, granted they make guttural sounds that are hard to reproduce, but it really does pose a problem. Okay? I visited her in January there. Reading appropriate text with appropriate teacher feedback, giving teacher feedback as opposed to, I mean, my son's instruction in third grade was terrible. I'll put this out here. My son was not eligible for special ed in third grade, but the instruction in my son's third grade consisted almost entirely of that reading method that's referred to as SSR. Sustained silent reading. Okay? That was his instruction. You came into the classroom, there were beanbag chairs, you went and read in beanbag chairs, and if you were quiet long enough, she would motion you up and give you candy. He loved it. He loved it. This is a kid who's lived in like 7 different countries, traveled all sorts of places, done all sorts of things. He talks about third grade as the best year of his life. Okay? They were the first to recess, last to leave. Right? They went to lunch twice sometimes. But it was interesting, okay? But what do we do? Just sit there. Right? But it was interesting, but that was sustained. There was no reading instruction whatsoever. And you guys know, third grade is a big year for state tests. Yeah. He did not do so well because there was no instruction. Kids actually need instruction. Okay? It's what we need to, that's what we pay the teachers to do. We pay the teachers to teach. Okay? Students require a level of intensity that may be challenging. Okay? Building automaticity and fluency can sometimes be difficult. I'm putting it up here. I'm telling you, this is what we need to do. Is it easy? No, it's not. Reading is not easy. Teaching is not easy. I remember this real specifically. When I first got married, I was a teacher. Okay? My wife was still undergrad. Still my wife, by the way. Though we had some friends who just divorced through text. I haven't checked my texting in a while, so I think I'm still married. Okay? But it was interesting about this. I remember on Friday nights coming home at 7:30, and she would say, "Do you want to go out?" That was not going to happen. I was exhausted. And let me tell you, I used to run ultra marathons. It's not like a physical capacity. I was mentally exhausted from teaching. Teaching is hard work because you're often having to convince kids to do things that they do not want to do. Hey kids, you're over there having fun over there. Stop having fun. Come over here and do this more fun thing called phonics. Right? Just negotiate this. You spend your whole day negotiating with these kids. By the time you get home, you're exhausted. Right? It was terrible. And we're still married, but it was a tough couple of years. When I want to go out. No. I want to go to sleep, but it's only 7:45. So what? All right? You all understand what I'm talking about. It really is tough. Right? People don't talk about how tough teaching is. The other thing about teaching, this is a segue. People don't talk about how tough it is when you're a teacher when you get pregnant with a child and naming that child. No one tells you this. No one tells you this. I mean, think about this. Right? I've been a teacher for a number of years, but I have one student, the worst student in all my teaching. He was a 5th grade boy who on weekends would chop wood to get bigger. He was big enough to eat hay. He was a big kid. He liked to throw chairs. His name was Calvin. We knew our first child was going to be a boy. My wife kept saying, I like the name Calvin. Like hell we're doing that. Okay? I realize my role in the pregnancy is very different, but I know. Okay? Okay? But think about this. Also, sample phonics activities, breaking things down. And breaking things down. And some of these kids really have problems with this. They really do. And they need systematic instruction in how to do this. And you can't just throw words at them randomly. You need to be very systematic as a part of this. I mean, I had a kid who read the word, I'm going to spell the word to you. It's the word office, O-F-F-I-C-E. He read it as off ice. Off ice. There was no way that I spent the whole year. I moved. He may still call it this. Right? But he was off ice, office. And so and is trying to get him to bring things. And yes, but you have to be very systematic and build these sounds and build these letters. Kindergarten teachers go through the alphabet, A, B, C. There are better ways to go through the alphabet to help them. Okay? There are letters that they can do and things like this and experiencing things. Just because it goes with the song, that doesn't mean we have to do it that way. So we have to think about our dedicated instruction to help them as a part of this. Okay? Okay? So we have this. So actually, I'm actually going to do something different with you, just because I'm entertained. And I'll send these to you. All right? I will send these to you. My email address is on that 504 document. Okay? I will just say, send me the simulations. Ask me to send these to you. I will gladly send these to you. You can use these with your teams. Because a lot of individuals out there do not believe that reading disabilities actually exist. They really do, or the fact that their 19 of their 20 kids are making it, so they don't believe that a kid actually has some problems. Okay? So this is figure A. So what I often do is I have teachers start reading this. Okay? Just start reading this. Right? And I call on things like this. Right? And it really does pose a problem for them. I'm going to give you a minute. Go ahead, read this, then there's going to be a quiz. I'm seeing a lot of shared activities here. Reading typically is not a shared activity. Okay. It may not have been a minute, but I'm bored. So what's interesting about this is, all right, who knows the answer to the question of what was the kid's job? Something in China. Wrong. Now what's interesting about this is, and the reason I put this out here, and I'm serious, use this. And I'll show you what it looks like. It's a special font on my computer. Is use this because how you are reading this is you're reading this how many kids with significant reading problems read things. Is they read it word by word. And when they get to the end of the sentence, they have exhausted all of their mental energy in reading it word by word that they can't put it together. I know you've worked with kids who have significant reading problems that you ask them to read something, they'll read it, and then you ask them what it says, and they'll say, I don't know. One word, I don't know. It's because they've been spending all their mental energy and capacity reading it word by word that they don't have any understanding of what the whole thing means. And this poses a problem because what do we really want kids to read for is for meaning, not just to be able to read the individual words. We want them to be able to understand and synthesize what's going on. So this is an example of this. Put this up there. I actually go around the room and ask for volunteers to read it and embarrass the snot out of people when they do this. I've chosen to not do that because Dale doesn't want me to get off the stage. Right? So it's interesting about this, but you share this, but you can do this. So let me show you what it actually says. All right? Now, you guys can read this. Think about how much faster you're reading this. Okay? You're going so much quicker, so much quicker, so much quicker, so much quicker. And this is something that we need to talk about, is you guys have a level of automaticity. You have the ability to do these things. You have the capacity to do these things. You have the energy to do this. Kids with reading problems do not have this level of automaticity. So we need to provide them specific instruction on how to do this. Okay? I will send this to you. Okay? Next thing. All right? Some kids have problems with B's, D's, P's, and Q's. All right? Read this to yourself. I wish reading was easy for everyone. I wish we didn't have to talk about dyslexia. I wish we didn't have to talk about special education for kids who had reading problems. I wish we didn't have to have special needs for these kids. The reality of the situation, I'll make sure I send it to you. So, no, you can take pictures. All right, go ahead. I'll take all the pictures. I'll send you the copies. Right? But I wish we didn't have to have this conversation. But not all kids learn the same way. That's what we need to emphasize with general education teachers, is that all kids don't learn the same way. And that some kids need individual instruction and individual support on this. Okay? So, when we read this to you, what is a learning disability? You may be surprised to know that although I can't read this. What is a learning disability? You may be surprised to know that although it may alter his ability of intelligence to others, I'm going to actually show you the cheat sheet. Now, I have it for you. Let me get to figure C. Okay? The last one I'm going to show with you is I will give you 5 seconds to read this. Okay? 5 seconds. Okay? You read this, 5 seconds. Okay? I'm not going to call on you, but did anybody understand what it says? Now, I'm not going to call on you. Just raise your hand. Okay? Okay, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. I'm giving you double time. Some kids need things read to them at the same time that they see it. One of the things we're also seeing with dyslexia pushes is kids having their learning styles identified. Okay? And you're going to see a serious push for this. Parents wanting their kids' learning style identified. The research on this it's basically non-existent. It really doesn't help. Okay? So their kids, what we often do with kids with dyslexia is give them multiple modalities. The moment I start reading this to you, you hear it and see it at the same time, I guarantee you're going to get it. One person back there did already, but it's interesting. You'll get it. All right? So when parents come to you, talk about learning styles, don't just say you're a bunch of whack jobs. Just say, we use multiple modalities, and emphasize that. Emphasize that, because there really is very little evidence that identifying a kid as a visual learner is going to help them. So I'll read this to you. Right? Figure C. Probably have that. The tortoise and the hare. Once upon a time, a hare teased a tortoise because his gait was so slow. The tortoise said, even though you're faster than I am, I can beat you in a race. The hare, thinking the tortoise was dumb, challenged him to a race. They started together, but the hare, sure his victory, lay down and went to sleep. The tortoise didn't top at all. When the hare finally woke up, the tortoise had already won the race. The moral of the story is, the slow and Teddy win the race. Okay? Use this with your staff. explain to them why kids need things read. Because one of the big complaints I have from teachers is if they get the things read to them, it's cheating. This often happens with kids who need extended time or tests read to them. This is a big complaint that teachers have. If they get it read to, why can't everyone? Well, it's only because they need it. It's not because there's some other issue. They need these things read to them. Okay? I will gladly send to these use them, whatever it can to help with your teams. I will also send with it, all right, along with it, the answers. So common strategies, okay? Common strategies, I mean, there's fun things that we can do. There's fun things. Remember, most of these kids with dyslexia we're talking about are kindergarten, first, second, third, who need instruction. We need to make reading fun for them. Because what do we find if we don't? They don't like reading. And what happens? We typically find them eligible for special ed or with significant problems in 4th or 5th grade. And by that point, they're 2, 3, 4 years behind. And do they ever catch up? Not often. So there's some activities we can see, okay? Skip the word, snake word, chunky monkey, things like this. I taught kids with learning disabilities for several years. It was fun actually trying to incorporate these strategies and be very systematic about it as opposed to just saying, here, I mean, the previous teacher that I followed would basically hang words on the wall, and they had to memorize the words completely out of isolation. There needs to be systematic efforts to do this. Language is terms it builds on itself. And yes, you have some kids who come with great language skills when they come to school. And yes, you have some kids who come with poor language skills when they come to school. But what we have to think about is making sure that we can incorporate what we can do to be supportive for them. Okay? Other common strategies. Okay? You can see not evidence-based, not a complete strategy, a good decoding strategy. Okay? So keep this in mind. Okay? Okay? Better is to provide high efficiency strategies best aligned with language. Be consistent about this. Okay? So here, integrated strategies. Okay? Okay? How can we better prepare teacher candidates to support current teachers? Okay? What is happening within teacher preparation? Not much. I'm really serious about this. There's not much. We follow what used to be called NCATE. Now it's called CAPE for accreditation, and there is not much on specific decoding strategies relating to reading, and it poses a significant problem because this is what teachers are going to be expected to do, okay? And it poses a problem. Okay? How successful have we changed this? Well, we have the state, for instance, the Virginia Dyslexic Module, which I've already told you about. You have some states doing things like this, but on the whole, there's nothing really out there. So that module only takes like half hour or so to do, and you do get a lot about this. Okay? Right? Good teacher preparation exists, but it's far from systematic. Think about this. Most teacher preparation programs increasingly, and you guys are seeing this in your prep programs, and as you see the number of individuals going into teaching starting to decline, okay? We're seeing this, it's a dramatic decline about this, okay? And it's going to pose a significant long-term problem for our field 5-10 years from now, because we're just not going to, because as you guys start to retire, which all people say retirement is great fun, but don't do it. We need you. Okay, it's not wonderful, and it's not as don't believe her. She's lying. All right, okay, but we need people to come to do the backfill. We're increasingly hiring adjuncts who may be great adjuncts. Okay, but they're not systematically tied with what's going on with the whole curriculum. They don't know what's going on from one class to another class, and that poses a problem as part of this. Okay, and we're dealing with these issues. And so there's not a lack of systematic preparation for this. Second, lack of coherence with in-service PD is also a problem. So I give you those kind of simulations to kind of start the idea of talking with individuals, and when you go back to your schools and your districts, so you can start talking about PD with them. These are some strategies that incorporated with like the Virginia Dyslexic Module can help start incorporating some strategies so they understand and think about it as a very real issue and help them about this, okay? Attention to the structure of language, especially important to meet those needs with dyslexia. Most of our schools and universities do not talk about language-based problems. Okay? We talk about the identification of problems, But we do not talk about language-based problems, okay? Not intuitive even for highly literate adults. I mean, yes, most people in education tend to be fairly smart, but it's not an intuitive structure, things like this, okay? There's some study, 90% of people out there believe that learning styles, we need to identify learning styles despite the fact that there's no existence for them, okay? We can drive systematic implementation, but we don't see changes at the national level to drive these kinds of things, okay? So where do our teachers need instruction in order to help kids with phonics, okay? This is a survey of teachers and their ability to do this. 27% could not identify just basic phonics. This is elementary teachers, okay? Recognize when a child is placed in text too difficult or for her to decode. 43% of the teachers had trouble identifying this, okay? Teachers could not understand listening comprehension as a vehicle for building reading comprehension in weak decoders. They didn't understand these basic things, okay? Or teachers had difficulty understanding basic curriculum-based measures and how to identify these things. So these are the kinds of things we need to provide instruction for teachers on how to do and make sure that they understand where we are with this as a part of this. And it poses a significant problem, okay? Okay. Okay. One thing I want you to think about, okay, is teaching. I observe a lot of student teachers. I see a lot of wasted time. Okay? One thing that we can emphasize, and one thing that I often look at when I observe student teachers, and increasingly districts are hiring me to observe bad teachers as a way of justifying removing them. Okay? And they want someone from the outside, so it's an impartial view. Tell us honestly what you think about this person. I know the only reason they're asking me, it's not because the teacher's up for an award. So things like this. But one thing I look at is what's called academic learning time, or how much time they're actually spending on instruction as opposed to the getting ready or the planning or the moving around kinds of things. I observed a class I guess it was in May, and I think they're in the first 2 hours, I think there was only like 7 minutes of actual instructional time. There were some activities. Why don't you sit at your desk and talk amongst your friends? Why don't you get ready pack your bags, things like this. There's very little things actually done. We need actually direct instruction time from the teacher. So one thing you can do as you're evaluating your teachers, look at this. Look at how much time they're actually spending on instruction. Not how much time they're spending between activities, how much time they're spending getting ready for things, but think about this. So we think about ourselves as teachers. How packed can we get through the course of the day? What can we get done? And there are some teachers who are masters at this. So make sure that if you find a teacher who's really good at this, have your poor teachers go observe them and talk to them about how they incorporate this and what's going on. Because one thing that I talk about with teachers who are really bad, who are not good at what they do, I have them think about, what are they good at? Tell me something you're good at, okay? So I observed a teacher in April who was not very good at a lot of things in teaching. So I said, tell me something you're really good at. He says, I'm really good at skateboarding. That's great. I'm proud of you. I can't skateboard. All the cool kids, except for me at my high school, skateboarded. I was one of the cool kids, all right? No, I was on the debate team. It's interesting, right? But so I said, so how did you get good at skateboarding? Is I went and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And I kept doing it over and over and over again. It's the same way with teaching. You have to practice and practice and practice. You have to think about these things, observe others. He said, I observed others. Go observe others who are good at this. Emulate them. Think about what's good. Think about what's good. Repeat this. Constantly adapt to the new situations. Use these kind of examples to help with this, okay? So, right? But think about this as we go through this, okay? So what are some current challenges, okay? Well, you're seeing parents going to get neuropsychological evaluations and then having them get fMRIs, okay? We don't do a lot with those in K through 3 instruction, okay? Yeah, bring an fMRI to an instructional team meeting. We're not going to do a lot with this, okay? But you can see some discussions relating to this, okay? So I'm actually going to skip down. I helped generate a quiz on this. It was in a big journal article not too long ago. And so this is actually so to help you understand your terms of dyslexia. This is available, I think, this whole PowerPoint is available to download. We're going to walk through. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, 15 seconds to take the quiz. Then I'm going to give you the answers, all right? So, okay. take the quiz real fast. Just this question right here, all right? Then I'm going to give you the answers. All right? See how you do. Answer to number 1 is B. Oh, I saw that. I got that. All right, I used to teach deaf kids. Okay, things like this, despite the fact that people think it's A. All right? Okay? Yeah, again, I'm putting this out here because I want you to be able to use this with your in-services to talk about these things. All right? Second, neuroimaging. Read through this one. This one takes a little bit longer. Just putting out here, I'm recommending you get a neuroimaging machine next to your copier machine. You can train the secretaries in how to work these things. Sort of like when I was a teacher, the secretary, when I first started teaching, the secretary had a computer and she had the paper that she had to feed into the printer, the green and white paper, things like this. The answer is A. Okay? C. Okay? Okay? This talks about how it really is there are different kinds of brains. Go through this one. Okay, answer is C. C. All right? They rely on other things, which is why we need to provide them instruction, explicit instruction in how to do this. Okay? If you don't get this one right, you have to leave. Okay. Answer is very good, B. All right, yeah, fair. Things like this. I have my little cheat sheet here. That's how I do it. Answer is D. Yeah, RTI. Okay? I have a few more of these. Okay? A. Here's an easy one. I thought I'd give you a short one. Saw that. Okay. Okay. False. B, yes, B. And those who've been around for a while, for instance, like you've probably seen the word attack sections of like the Woodcock-Johnson or the Woodcock Reading Mastery Test. It's those nonsense words. I remember I gave that test so many times that I could give the test without even looking at it. If, bim, rim, dat, things like this. But it was just, it's kind of words in isolation, kind of things like this. Good? If you don't believe this as true, then we have some problems. You have to believe that we can actually change the instruction for these kids. That's what we as teachers do. We arrange whatever variables are necessary for kids to be able to improve and master the material. And that's one thing we emphasize, right? Yeah. Yeah. D, yeah. We think about reading as solely as a reading issue, but this is one that cuts across everything. And we need to emphasize the importance in this as how it cuts across everything and be able to address this. And really does pose some problems. I mean, when we talk about this, when we talk about the average kid with learning disability, over 85% of them are identified as having a reading problem, but it cuts across everything that they do. We don't identify kids as eligible for a learning disability in science or a learning disability in social studies, despite the fact that they have reading problems and they can't read the material. So it's a reading problem and it manifests in things. I'm just going to do a few more real fast. Sequential. It's got to be sequential, okay? And that's what an Orton-Gillingham program does. It's a very sequential system. That's what SRA's corrective reading does. That's what Wilson does. It's all very sequential, okay? I got just two more for you, then, okay? 12. Answer C, okay? True, yeah. The hard part is you often think that you want to wait till they get to the end of the and there's some kids who will never seem to get to the end of the sentence. And they're struggling with these kinds of things. I will share these answers with you. You can see if you have the PowerPoint, does it download and show you more questions? Good, okay. I'll send the answers to you. You can use this within services or questions with your staff to help you kind of guide where we are with this. So you can see I think there's like 11 or 12 more questions. But I really want to emphasize, there's a part of this, okay? I'm going to go back, okay? Here are some examples of some remediation that works. You're going to hear a lot about these programs, okay? I spent some time, as I said earlier, I'm in the CEC's Division for Learning Disabilities Executive Board, and we spent a lot of time over the past couple of years trying to help states in the implementation of issues relating to dyslexia. So I've been privy to some of the high-level discussions relating to this. This is what you're seeing. This is what you're seeing, and this is what parents are demanding. What we're also starting to see, you will also start to see this, is people hanging up shingles as private consultants selling their services relating to this. I do a lot of, I live a couple hours from Philadelphia, but I do some work down there. There are people who are Linda Bell trained who are charging, you'll appreciate this, $120 per hour for services. All right? And I'll let you know. All right, let's let you know. I'm toying with doing this, and I'm not going to be greedy. I will just do like 5 kids a day. Okay, 5 kids a day, that's $600, things like that. $3,000 a week. I can live off that. Okay, I can do that. I mean, my hour only lasts 45 minutes, but I can do it. All right. Okay, I'm in higher ed too long, things like this. But you can see this as a way of training things like this. All right. Okay. The Orton-Gillingham methodology. And this is all part of the slides that you have. But I'm just highlighting this for you so that when you hear parents talk about that, you at least have some familiarity with the language and the expectations of the verbiage that they're going to be using. Language-based, multisensory, sequential, cognitive, emotionally sound, things like this. All right? Here are some Orton-Gillingham systems. Now, one thing that I'm going to caution you on, I'm really going to caution you on. For those kids who are found eligible for special education and receiving services for learning disabilities, do not write a specific program into a child's IEP. Just don't do it. Write like a phonemic-based program. Write a phonemic-based program. Okay? Why I say that? I was involved in a district this past year, a very small district, where they wrote that the kid would receive Wilson language instruction. They had one Wilson language instructor. She was really, really good. Really good, and she was doing a great job. She was in a very bad car accident and missed 7 months of instruction for the kids. The kid did not get Wilson training the rest of the year. Parents said, my kids were supposed to get this. They sued and they won. Do not put specific programs. Also, it ties you to a specific program. Okay? Teachers, this is the one thing that's beautiful about special education. It gives you the flexibility to use it. If one program's not working, pull from another program. That's what I liked about special education, things like this. But here are some programs that are OG-based kind of programs, things like this. Parents will see this. They will hear this. There are websites that will sell these things. They will see this, and they will want this, and they will absolutely want this, and they will demand this for their IEPs. Yes, you can start these things, and some of these are low-cost kinds of things, okay? And so they don't require a lot of training, a lot of extra materials, but learn from these things, build on these things, but don't write specific programs in there, okay? The last thing, all right? Programs that are not effective in remediating phonics, dyslexia, okay? Some of these have amazing websites with 4 Zs. When parents come asking for these, run. Run away. Do not put these, do not use these. I have a good friend who is a reading recovery specialist. She swears by it. I wish it worked. I truly wish it worked. But for kids with really severe dyslexia, it's not there. Okay? Same thing with Fast Forward, Hooked on Phonics. They had the best ads for years. It works for me. Okay, things like this. Brain Gym also doesn't work. Sylvan, I wish Sylvan, despite the fact that they have these great centers that they set up, doesn't work. Okay? Special diets or medicine, there's a chiropractor near me. And I use chiropractic services. I run ultra marathons. I have problems from running. Don't worry, I'm aware of this. But the chiropractor's curing kids with dyslexia. Okay? Pay attention to these. These are all part of your handouts. Email me for the information related to those simulations. Use it with your teams. I'll be around the rest of the day for questions. Go have lunch. Thank you very much.